Spiritual warfare is not theatrical, it is cognitive. The forming of who you are is not accidental, it is cumulative. So discernment is not optional. If this episode confronted you, sit with it. If it clarified something, act on it. Discern the voice, submit to the spirit, govern yourself. I'm John Diomede, and this is The Voice in the Reckoning. If you would like to contact me, use the email on my website, voiceinreckoning.com, to review our resources and reach out directly. Don't forget to follow us and to turn on notifications so you don't miss any episodes. There is a noise in your head. It's not neutral. It's not composed of a single source. Most people never question the voice they follow, but what you agree with internally will shape your life. This is where discernment begins and reckoning is discovered. Welcome to the Voice in the Reckoning podcast. I am John Diomede. Episode 4, Forgiveness and Containing the Nuclear Accident. Let me share a story with you through this episode. I will release parts of it as they become relevant during the teaching. I experienced sadness many years ago when my dad passed away, because at the time he was living in a nursing home, and I would go to visit him on Saturday, pick him up and take him to my home. I went to visit him, and when I got there, he had some kind of an infection. He was suffering from a fever. He was semi-conscious. The staff was giving him antibiotics. At the time, he had a catheter, and what turned out to be a bladder infection caused him to be hospitalized a couple of days later, and 2 weeks after that, my dad had passed away. For years, I was challenged because after I walked out of that nursing home, I felt like I made the wrong decision. And here is the problem. Forgiveness is not optional, it's structural. There are different types of forgiveness. One is forgiving self, one is forgiving others. It's really the same because of the core principles. Most people treat forgiveness as emotional. It is not. It is protective, spiritually protective. Without it, something is left exposed. What is exposed becomes dangerous, and I was exposed for a long time, for many years. At one point, I was speaking to my brother-in-law, who builds nuclear reactors, and he mentioned to me that when a nuclear reactor goes bad, they have to encase it in cement, which I will get back to in a few minutes. But it becomes very important in the area of unforgiveness, because unforgiveness is like a nuclear accident. It's not passive, it's active. It sits beneath the surface, it accumulates, it stores energy, and like a nuclear reactor, without containment, it spreads its radioactivity all over the place. It affects everything around it: thoughts, words, reactions, and relationships. Bitterness is not contained emotion. It spreads like a virus. It sits beneath the surface. It accumulates. It stores energy like a nuclear reactor. Without containment, it spreads its radioactivity all over the place. It affects everything around it. It affects thoughts. It affects words. It affects relationships. Bitterness is not contained emotion. Bitterness spreads like a virus. So here I am having trouble forgiving myself. And I had to get down to the core truth, the plain truth. Unforgiveness gives the enemy ground. It doesn't give them ownership. It gives the enemy real estate. It gives them access to memory, access to interpretations, access to reactions. And once access is granted, distortion begins. So over and over again for years, I beat myself up. The past was replayed, the offense was magnified. My identity was shaped by the injury. I was a bad son. So over time, this unforgiveness led to bitterness. And my bitterness felt justified. I was angry. Not forgiving myself was a way to hurt myself, was a way to penalize myself. I felt that anger and bitterness and unforgiveness concerning myself was earned because of my bad reactions. Bitterness feels like protection sometimes, but it is not protection. Bitterness is exposure. It keeps the wound open, which it did for me. It preserves the offense, which it did for me. It invites repetition, which it did for me. Not externally, but internally. The event was over. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. Forgiveness does not excuse the offense. Forgiveness does not say what happened was acceptable. Forgiveness does not erase the memory. Forgiveness does not remove the event from your history. Forgiveness does not deny the reality of the event ever happening. Forgiveness acknowledges it fully. What forgiveness does is it revokes access. In other words, the door gets shut. It removes the ground that was given. It says this thought will no longer govern me. It says this offense will no longer define me. This will no longer be replayed in my mind without resistance, without guidance from the Holy Spirit. Forgiveness is not emotional release. It is a decision of authority. And when I took the authority to encase the offense in cement, this event with my father, forgiveness began to take hold, because that event could not affect the other parts of my life. It could not affect the relationship I had with others. It could not make me miserable. So remember the order. The world wants to reinforce your offense. The demonic wants to magnify your offense. The self decides whether to access it or not. The self decides, the self chooses to hold on or to release it. And what is held on to becomes internal. What is released loses power. When we refuse to forgive others because forgiveness is difficult, it feels like loss of justice, loss of validation, loss of the right to remain offended. But what is actually lost is access for distortion, access for repetition, access for continued damage. This is why we must forgive others. So there are two kinds of forgiveness, two things that I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about the forgiveness of self, and I'm speaking about the forgiveness of others. But they are the same when it comes to spiritual benefit. Consider these words. They're strong biblical words. Jesus said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." This did not cause Jesus to agree with our brokenness. It just demonstrates that Jesus recognized our limitation. And we all have limitations because we're all broken human beings. Others have limitations, and we ourselves have limitations. Forgiveness recognizes the blindness, it recognizes brokenness, it refuses to allow that brokenness to become our identity. We have to contain these areas so the demonic realm does not have access to them. Forgiveness is containment. It's like a cement enclosure. It does not eliminate the event, it just contains its influence. Without containment, everything is affected. With containment, damage is limited. So consider forgiving yourself and consider forgiving others. Not every voice in your mind should lead. Discern the source before you release the thought. The wrong agreement leads to regrettable choices in life. The correct agreement leads to reckoning. This is The Voice and Reckoning. Have a good day. For more information, visit our website, voiceandreckoning.com. To contact me, use the email address on that site. Spiritual warfare is not theatrical, it's cognitive. Formation is not accidental, it's cumulative. and discernment is not optional. If this episode confronted you, sit with it. If it clarified something, act on it. Discern the voice, submit to the Spirit, govern yourself. I am John Diomede, and this is The Voice and the Reckoning. If you would like to contact me, use the email on my website, voiceandreckoning.com, to review our resources and reach out directly.